Welcome to Finding Certainty with your host and U.S. Army veteran, Patrick Laing. Over the next hour, you'll learn from Patrick and his expert guests how to attract more certainty into your business and your life. Now, here is your host, Patrick Laing.
Welcome to Finding Certainty. Appreciate you stopping by if this is the first time, and we're grateful you're getting to spend your Friday morning with us. If you're a frequent listener, we appreciate your patronage. This is our favorite day of the week. I look forward to it all week, to get to sit down and spend an hour with various guests sharing their stories and sharing their insights into how to find more certainty in their lives. And in turn, in your life, as we go through these interviews and as I study and research this topic more and more, as you may know, if you're a frequent listener, I do a monologue on the first Friday of every month. You can go back and look at those if you'd like. In the past, we're going through the alphabet from A for accountability and B for balance. Just this last month, we talked about H is for humility. All of these are characteristics that embody and demonstrate how to find more certainty in our lives. Well, the rest of the weeks throughout the month, I get to interview another individual, another business leader or community leader who is exhibiting these characteristics, who embodies these characteristics. And today we have the extraordinary opportunity of visiting with a very good friend of mine and a business leader herself, Miss Jill McAuley. Jill, thanks for being on Finding Certainty.
Yes, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I must say, you have the unique honor, I guess, or unique role, if you will, of being one of only 3 guests I've had on my show more than once. And I only have the really good ones on more than once, just so you know. I'd like to just introduce you a little bit, but I want to start out by saying how much I admire you and appreciate you and what you're doing. Just so you know, Jill is a member of our team here at Certainty Management and the Certainty Collective, and Jill is our Senior VP of Admin. She is one of the very first faces that people see and meet when they come to Certainty Management or Certainty Global, and we wanted them to see the best very first, so we put our best foot forward. They'll do a couple of interviews, but as they are coming on and onboarding and getting to know our company, Jill's the person who walks them through those steps. And I think it's important that you put your best foot forward and you have a good first impression and that you help someone feel comfortable. We all know as we're starting out in a new career or new opportunity that there's some trepidation. We don't know what we don't know, right? We don't know quite how to do the job and how we're going to fit in, and are we going to be accepted, and are we going to be successful? And so I don't know if I've even ever told you this, Jill, but I just love the fact that you're the person who helps them ease into that transition, because there's some mental stress around that, right? And just so you know, if you're listening, Jill is not only is she highly accomplished and very articulate and she's professional. She's a true professional, but she's also the nicest, kindest, most gregarious person you've ever met. And so I don't mean to put you on the spot, Jill, but we're so blessed to have you as part of our team and really appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you. People can't see over the radio, but I'm blushing, so I appreciate that. And I thought you invited me back the second time because I needed a second chance the first time.
Yeah, I needed to fix the first one. No, you did amazing. Well, last time we talked, we spoke about one of our programs, and it's a program designed to help college students graduate debt-free, right? Our Certainty Fellowship program. And maybe later in the show, I'll tell you a little bit about a connection we made this week. I'm currently in Ontario, California, and we're here for a big expo we attended at the Ontario Convention Center. And remind me before we end the show today to tell you about a connection we made that's in line with that, because it's just a really, really great continuation, if you will, of our conversation. So we always start out sharing a little bit of your story. I'd like to just have you share with the listening audience, who is Jill McAuley, right? Your story I think is a great example. It's a lead in to who we are and what we're doing.
Sorry.
And it's just I'm in a hotel and I just had housekeeping try to break in on us here. So let's go down a little bit down memory lane. Let's talk about who is Jill McAuley, right? What brought you to where you are today? I think it's a really important story. And if you don't mind, and I'll preface it by saying this. Jill is an inspiration to us for several reasons. One of those, though, is that she works with limited physical abilities since she was in a rollover accident over 20 years ago. And ever since then, she has been in a wheelchair. She is paralyzed from the collarbone down. And I'm blown away all the time, Jill, by how much you get done. And she's an example to all of us of how to not let your challenges overwhelm you and not let your shortcomings or your hurdles or what life throws at you get you down. Now, it's not easy, right? We all get down. We all feel overwhelmed. We feel tired and worried, but you are a great example of that. So do you mind just sharing your story, Jill? I think it's very illustrative, and I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. I'd be happy to. Well, I'm a native Northwesterner. I live in Seattle and have my whole life. So I love nature. I love outdoors. And I grew up really very active child. I did a lot of sports and spent a lot of time horseback riding and just outside, having probably the perfect childhood I think anyone could have. But after I graduated from high school, I went to my first year of college in southeastern Idaho and had a really amazing year. I met some really incredible people. And my roommates from that year are still some of my best friends from today. I was able to be part of their vocal performance music major program and just really it was a great year because I was learning, as many college students do, what the first feeling of independence is like. And I figuring out who I was, what I maybe wanted to do with my life, just kind of, starting to see the picture of maybe what life could be for me and who I was going forward. And at the end of the year, I started to drive home back to Seattle for the summer. And about halfway back to Seattle, I fell asleep in the middle of the afternoon and rolled my car. And that caused a serious spinal injury. So I am a quadriplegic. And after that point, I spent a few weeks in intensive care, a couple of months in the spinal rehab department at the University of Washington Medical Center. And that was really helpful for me because it's a whole new way of living. And they're very good at helping people learn how to navigate some of the initial hurdles and obstacles of all of a sudden living life in a wheelchair. And so they set me up for the best possibility at kind of moving forward well. And I came home to a house that I'd lived in my whole life, but it felt like really, it was almost unrecognizable to me because everything from a seated position literally looks completely different. And fortunately, we didn't have stairs to my home, but we did have to make some other accommodations around the house so that I could return back here. And so, I think the physical aspect people see, when they see me, they see a wheelchair, they see someone who has a disability. But I think one of the biggest hurdles, even more than that, was just overcoming this realization that nothing I planned for my life was going to turn out like I thought. And I think now that I'm 24 years out from my car accident, it's even more apparent that that was really the biggest hurdle that I had to get over, because it was really very shocking. And most of us, I'm sure, lives don't really turn out like we think they're going to. But for me, it was just so traumatic that it's taken a long time.
Well, you hit a good point. I think most of our lives don't turn out exactly how we thought they would, but we at least have a general idea, right? We have dreams, we have goals. We want to go to school, maybe, want to get married, have kids, maybe. We all have different objectives in life, but we have a general idea of where we're going to go. And your trajectory, your journey was dramatically changed, right? You went from going north to going south, or going, you took a hard right that you had no idea was coming. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that part of the trauma of it, or part of the challenge of it, was it was so unexpected and so dramatic of a turn?
Mm-hmm.
You just didn't see it coming, right?
Most definitely. Yeah, I'd always pictured that I would get married and have kids, and just these milestones that I thought, oh, success looks like this, and I'll achieve this, and I'm going to get to this place. And I identified myself as, like an athlete and a singer, and, all these things that they were how I identified, just who I am. You asked that question at the beginning, who is Jill McAuley? Well, I'm a singer, I'm all these things that were the things that I did with my body. And I didn't realize how almost an identity crisis, really, because all those things I couldn't do anymore. So then who am I now? And so it's a process of redefining myself, and finding things that I can be involved in and do. But I also realized that there are eternal identifiers that we all have, that no car accident, no, traumatic event in your life can really remove from us. That I'll always be a daughter. I'll always be a sister. I will always be a child of God. These things that are unchangeable no matter what happens to us. And that was one of the first and most helpful things after my accident, to help me adjust and to keep moving forward. That I'm not defined by what I do. I'm defined by these things that are unchanging.
I think you hit a really good point, Jill. So much of what we identify ourselves as is peripheral, right? I don't want to say superficial, but it's external, right? It's a question of what I'm doing, or what I'm being, or what let's put it this way. It's what we're doing, not what we're being, not who we are, right? Mm-hmm. It's the path we're on, but not the core principle of where we come from, why we're here, where we're going. These eternal principles. I love the word eternal, because those are unchanging, right? We identify ourselves as a lot of things that may be temporary. I was an athlete, but I used to identify myself as a basketball player, and I used to love proving that white guys can jump, right? Because I could dunk on anybody. Now I can barely touch the rim, right? I won't talk about how much weight I've added, and my knees are shot, and and so forth. But that was a big identity for me, was as a basketball player. You were a horseback rider, right? That's who you saw yourself as a horseback rider and a singer. And it's hard, because those things are really important to us, right? Not only do we identify ourselves through those activities or those hobbies or passions, but we find joy in those things. And so how do you transition from losing those things to finding joy in other areas? I believe it's an important question because it's a key to finding certainty in our lives, true certainty in our lives. How do you think we do that? How does anyone do that? Move from one paradigm to another paradigm?
I think time helps a lot. It's not going to happen overnight. It didn't for me, but realizing that I didn't lose those 18 years of the able-bodied Jill McAuley. You know, they're still a part of who I am. I have the memories. I have the love for them. I love who I was before my accident. But if I can change my thought process to realizing that it could be an opportunity to help me see life in a different way that is going to open me up to things and lessons and people and experiences that I would have not had if I was not in a car accident. And so it's, especially the past couple of years, I've really found that it's actually helping me to just become a better person. And there's a freedom in realizing that wherever we are, that there is an opportunity around us to just learn and grow if we can just not be resistant to it. That I love the word equanimity, and it means that not being resistant to the circumstance or the situation that we find ourselves in, whether it's no matter what it is, that if we can like feel it, live it, accept it, and learn from it, that we can progress forward. And that if I resist the situation and the opportunity to learn, that I'm really placing myself in a state of suffering because I'm always fighting the reality of my life. And when I realized that, I thought, okay, you know, that is actually really helpful because I can just say, yes, I will do this. And I'm just going to do the best I can and try and move forward.
I think it's important throughout our lives, right? To remember three things. Number one is it's maybe different, but it doesn't mean it's worse. It could be diametrically different, completely different than a path you were on or a future you envisioned. But that doesn't mean that the new trajectory that you're on or the new path you're on can't be rich and full and abundant. It's very different, right? But it doesn't have to be bad. I think a lot of it comes down to it is a paradigm shift. I remember a story Stephen Covey shared. I believe it was in his book 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, but he talked about how he was on a train one morning. I believe he was in New York, riding the train in from New Jersey. It was a Sunday morning. It was a peaceful, kind of quiet Sunday morning. And people were reading their papers. There was sun flitting in the windows. And then a man got on the train and sat down next to Stephen Covey with several children, young children. And these kids started just wreaking havoc. I mean, they're running up and down the aisle and pushing each other and yelling and making all this commotion, right? Just totally ruined this nice, peaceful Sunday morning atmosphere. And everybody's looking at this guy like, what is your problem? Control your brood, right? And they're knocking people's papers even and things. And finally, Stephen Covey leans over to the guy and says, sir, he goes, I don't know if you realize, but your kids are kind of wreaking havoc, right? They're bothering everybody. You know, and he was kind of irritated, right? Everybody was irritated. And the guy, he's got his head in his hands, and he looks up and he says, oh, I'm so sorry. He said, get over here, sit down. It's like he hadn't even noticed, right? And he says, I'm so sorry. He goes, we just came from the hospital, and my wife, their mother, just passed away. And he said, I honestly don't know what I'm going to do. She was our whole life. And instantly, Stephen Covey says that in an instant, he changed how he viewed this guy from a point of irritation and it's kind of exasperation to empathy, to sympathy, to he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Can I help?" He helped bring the kids over. He helped with the little kids. He started serving this man instead of being frustrated and irritated by him. But he talked about how a paradigm shift isn't just feeling differently; it's viewing a situation differently. I think it's a really important point in trauma, in anything in our lives, that we remember that. And try to not just let it happen naturally, but actually proactively have our own paradigm shifts. We have to choose to see things differently, not just let them happen, because it may not happen if we don't actively do it. I remember when I was divorced, I didn't get to see my kids every day, and it was the hardest thing in the world. It was the worst part of the divorce, not being able to be with my kids, come home from work and go out in the garage and build things and shoot hoops, and I had to choose to see it differently. I had to choose to look forward to the times I saw them and the benefits of the fact that, we could get together and we got to do the fun stuff, right? We got to go out and have outings. And then I'd send them home and I didn't have to deal with the runny noses and homework and things like that, because I had to choose to see it differently. Would you agree? I mean, is that one of the strategies, coping mechanisms?
Yes. Thank you for sharing that story. Yeah, I have to choose every day not to be bitter and angry and just frustrated and let my physical limitations limit me in mental, emotional, spiritual aspects of my life. I cannot let my circumstances disable me in other ways. I'm already very physically limited, but if I let that limitation paralyze me in all other aspects of my life, then I'm even more limited. I think limited is the right word. And so I need to choose every day, and even sometimes moment to moment, okay, just take a deep breath and just keep going. And you talked about assumptions, like that person on the train assumed that he was a bad father, and then didn't watch his kids close enough. And I deal with assumptions all the time. People assume things about me because I'm in a wheelchair. They maybe think I have other disabilities, or that I'm not capable, or that I can't do things for myself. And I know a lot of people who are in wheelchairs, and they run into that same assumption that they can't have a job, they can't, provide for themselves. That people just want to be seen as a person, not. We talked about this before, person first, right? I'm a person with a disability. I'm not a disabled person. And we're all humans, and we don't need or want others to assume things about us. And, and so, but again, I had expectations for my life, and I had to deal with those expectations and what I assumed for myself even. And in college, after my accident, went back to college in Utah, and I was looking for roommates to live with me. And there was 4 bedrooms in my apartment, and I had a really hard time. The apartment complex couldn't find people. I couldn't find people. And all the other apartments were full, but I couldn't find roommates. And so that led me to just really, what seemed obvious is that people just didn't want to live with, girls didn't want to live with another girl in a wheelchair, or whatever they assumed that would look like. And that was hard. I felt that very personally. But then eventually I met a girl on campus who was also in a wheelchair, and she was looking for a place to live, and Jamie. And my reaction, interestingly enough, was, well, I don't want to live with a girl in a wheelchair. And it was this, suddenly I was faced with my own assumptions about people with disabilities and people in wheelchairs that I had biases myself that I didn't know I had. I thought it was a very accepting and, I didn't judge people, but I, all of a sudden I was faced with my own thought processes about it. And so I had judgments against her. I had judgments against myself for what I could accomplish and who I was. And so I ended up living with Jamie, and it was one of the best, most instructive things that I have ever experienced. We are best friends today. And I was faced on a daily basis with almost a mirror image of who I am. And it taught me so much because she'd been in a wheelchair for almost her whole life. And she had experiences and lessons that she'd been learning for, a long time that I was able to gain and learn from myself. And that really helped me see that disability and being paralyzed was not the end of things, that there was still a lot that I could do.
Well, and you talk about limitations, right? Some limitations are imposed upon us. We have no say over the matter. I didn't get to choose, really, in my marriage, whether I stayed married. It ended unexpectedly. Wasn't my choice. And, sometimes it happens. You didn't choose to have an accident. I mean, it could have gone either way. I was in a rollover accident when I was 16, and I rolled my car 3 times, and I walked away from it without an injury, right? And so, I've had plenty of other bad things happen in my life that I wouldn't wish on anybody, and you had your accident happen to you that you wouldn't wish on anybody. But other limitations we impose upon ourselves comes back to I think you make a very important distinction when you say it's not a disabled person. I'm a person with a disability. That might sound minor, but that word choice reflects the mindset, reflects the whole attitude and the entire viewpoint or vision of who you are and what you're capable of. And it reflects on the whole community, right? I think it's really important. Our word choice is very important. How we view things is very important. One of my favorite quotes says that the level of our frustration is equal to the distance between our expectations and reality. Our expectations are way up here and reality is way down there. We're going to be really frustrated all the time. But and I'm not saying we lower our standards, but sometimes we have to look at things from a different viewpoint, and we have to be realistic, right? I think it's really interesting. I think the Lord has a hand in it all, right? He knew you needed that roommate, Julie, right?
Jamie.
Yeah. Jamie, sorry. And I think he knew you needed to learn those lessons. That's probably why he made it a little hard to find other roommates. And that takes me to the second point. I talked about the first point being that we get to choose how we view this. This is a limitations imposed or limitations that we impose. It's a viewpoint that we have to decide how we want to view something. And it's not easy sometimes. Sometimes we have to step away a little bit from it and look at it from a different perspective or ask for feedback, or just like Stephen Covey, we have to change our paradigm and not just let it happen subconsciously, but actually proactively do so. The second thing, as I said, though, is we need to realize that there is so much potential. It might be different, but it can be good. But I believe the third step to certainty is to not just realize that there could be purpose in it and that there's good in it and so forth, but then to proactively expand on the challenge and the opportunity in the setting. And one of the very best ways to do that is to serve others. Your roommate served you and taught you and became your best friend, one of your very best friends. You are such a great example of someone who's serving others and looking outward and trying to make a difference in the world, both through your work and through your community service and so forth. And I believe it's one of the keys to finding certainty in our lives and finding joy, even in the midst of struggles. If we're totally focused inward, I don't think we'll ever be as happy or as full and rich in our lives as we could be. I know you agree with this. I won't even ask you if you agree because I know you do. But I will make this point for our listening audience. One reason I wanted to have Jill on today is she was recently nominated for the National Miss Wheelchair competition. It's like Miss America for people with disabilities. So Jill was nominated as Miss Wheelchair Washington. She was crowned. She's being invited to speak in different engagements. She's going back to Grand Rapids, Michigan later this month to compete on the national platform. And so I wanted to have Jill on to give her a shout out and congratulations on her nomination. And I know we also wanted to talk a little bit about what your platform is, which this whole conversation we're having, right, leads right into your platform. Do you mind sharing with our listeners what that is and why you chose it?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. It has been a really great experience. I was crowned. My coronation was at the end of April. And before this, I didn't really know that this existed. And from some people in the wheelchair community in my area, they told me about this and I decided to get involved. And so it's been great, a great couple of months. And I'm excited for the rest of the year as well. But it's not a beauty competition. It's not about fashion or anything like that. It's a program, Miss Wheelchair America. It's a national nonprofit. And then not every state has a state title holder, but some do. And so for the next year, I get to choose a platform that I want to bring awareness to and advocate for specifically people in wheelchairs or yes. So I've chosen mental health awareness for people in wheelchairs and entitled it Wheeling Towards Wellness. And I've been learning a lot. I've been able to talk to organizations that are already working in this space for people with mental health struggles and people with disabilities, and learning a lot how those two things actually affect one another greatly. And it's been great.
Well, we're very proud of you, Jill. You are a fantastic example of someone you're wheeling toward wellness all the time, and you're helping others get there, right? In our company, Certainty Management, we talk a lot about how we want to just not just make income, but make a difference, right? And you can do business and do good, and you do that in all that you do, and your service in the community. You serve on boards, you serve in the hospital, you visit kids who are going through the same thing as you have, you serve in your church. That third point that I make about serving others as a way to find more certainty in our lives, I really believe that it is blended throughout the tapestry of your life. I don't know how you could go through the accident that you had and the trauma you've dealt with, the losses that you dealt with, and survive without looking outward. I had to do that in my divorce. I have had to do that through the challenges in my life. I think if people understood that principle more, it could change a lot of people. It could really help people, right? They say a rising tide raises all boats. If everyone looked outward, I think amazing things could happen. I heard a quote once that said, if you look at the person next to you and assume they're going through something really difficult, you're going to be right more often than not. I think another piece of this, and it kind of maybe as an umbrella over the whole topic, is that a lot of the times we feel alone. I feel like I'm the only one going through this, or you feel very isolated. I know that's a challenge in disability conversations in that community. It's a challenge in really any mindset, any depression, any anxiety. We oftentimes feel alone, which obviously we're not, right? We all are dealing with things, but have you experienced that? Have you found? Am I off off base here, or would you agree with that concept?
No, it's very true. Yeah, I felt alone, at the beginning in what I was experiencing because it was new to me and I was processing it. But I really found a great community of people and others in my area who also have a disability. And it's specifically in this case, Miss Wheelchair Washington is helping me take my experiences and learn and grow in them and bless and help others who are going through the same thing. And it's a really it provides a lot of purpose to what I'm experiencing. It helps me process and heal and help it make sense that why couldn't it be better, that I take what I'm learning and help somebody else. And it seems counterintuitive, like, because things take me a long time, doing Miss Wheelchair Washington doesn't really, like, on paper make sense because I've got a lot of other things I'm doing. There isn't really time to do it. I have to deal a lot with physical things that keep me in bed. So it doesn't really, in the totality of the hours of my day and what I need to accomplish, I shouldn't really sign up for this. But as I've gone through it and done it and just trusted and believed that God was placing this opportunity in front of me, that he would make a way and that I'd be able to somehow use my very limited capabilities to help other people. And as I've talked to those and helped people have more awareness around the mental health struggles of people in wheelchairs and with disabilities, then it's really, I found that purpose and things have been okay. And the statistics back up what you said earlier, that you can assume that people around you are going through something difficult. There's 333 million people roughly in the United States, and about 70 million or more have a disability. So that's about 1 in 4 people. And that's like 1 in 3 households with a disability. And these days, thanks to the pandemic, there's a lot more conversation happening specifically around mental health. And now mental health is considered a disability. So there's a lot of people out there who are quite literally going through something really difficult. And so that's why I chose this, because it does affect a lot of people. And the percentages and numbers are out there as well, that people with disabilities suffer from mental distress up to 5 times more than people who don't have a disability. And I assumed, just in my experience, that was because they were just depressed because they had a disability. But it's actually a lot more, there's a lot more to it than that. It's the lack of access to things like transportation and proper health care and having a job and a community, that if you don't have transportation, you are stuck at home and then you're isolated and lonely. And it's all these other factors that maybe even more than just depression over being disabled actually factor in. And so there's, I think people have really appreciated that insight, that it's important who we vote for, because they're creating programs that are, blessing or not, people who have lack of access to things. Or, like we talk about uncertainty management, that there are affordable healthcare options for people who don't have as much income, and for everybody, that employers can provide it and we can help people learn about it. Because then if you have a benefits program or insurance with the job that you have a community at your job, that helps you not feel alone. You can go to the doctor because you have the proper health care. So it's these type of things that everyone should have access to, and specifically people in wheelchairs, because when your mental health declines, your physical health declines, and it can be a downward spiral. And then these are the type of things that are also a huge draw on our economical system in our country, So if we can provide the support that people need, then they, they can live a better life, and our country can even function better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We're going to go to a quick break, and we will be right back. We're visiting with Jill McAuley. She's the Senior Vice President of Admin for Certainty Management. And I want to continue this conversation because I think this is really important, Jill. So don't go away if you're listening. We'll be right back in just another minute or two, and we'll continue the conversation. So on the YouTube channel, we keep recording, so you'll get a little bit of behind the scenes. We're using a new recording studio called Riverside that we're still trying to figure out how to use. I was watching the chat for the message to go to break, and I guess I was on the wrong one because I didn't see anything from them, but now I do. Now I see his notes, so we're a little bit behind on the break, but that's okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's my fault. But it's funny how I see this happen a lot, right? We have a plan. We're moving forward with that plan, and then things don't work the way we planned, right? Like I'm starting our show, and we got the housekeeper knocking on the door and asking me to change my linen or whatever, right? And she kept knocking. I don't know if you could hear it if it was coming through the mic, and then she finally closed the door, and I'm going like this. I'm going, no, go wait, right? And I probably should have put the do not disturb hanger on the door. I forgot to do that, but but then we just have to adjust. I mean, it's like a GPS, recalculating, right? We recalculate, and we have to do that in our lives, in our businesses, in our radio shows. I mean, whatever the case might be, if we can't learn to recalculate, we're in trouble. So here we go. We're coming back.
You're listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
I'm having a really great conversation this morning with my very good friend, Jill McAuley. She's the star of our team. She gets more done than most of us. And I'm just amazed, Jill, because not only do you accomplish so much, and she has to do things like run her computer with her mouth and use Siri and voice to text and things that most of us probably couldn't even figure out, for one thing. But two, we just I think we just take for granted a little bit in our lives how easy things are many of the times for many of us. One of the paradigm shifts that you've had to go through, Jill, and anyone who is in a wheelchair or any individuals with disabilities, is that you don't take things for granted anymore, do you? I mean, maybe there are some things you do, but you went through a pretty significant transition where the ability to ride a horse, the ability to sing and fill your diaphragm and be a singer, and the ability to dress yourself or feed yourself, these are things that you just, I would assume, before your accident, you took for granted, right? You appreciated them, but you didn't understand or hadn't really thought about how much they meant until they were gone. And isn't that the case for all of us when we lose something, whether it's a relationship or a physical ability or maybe a job or whatever, right? While we may have appreciated it, I think in many respects we take it for granted until it's gone. Well, as you're talking about mental health and how to overcome those repercussions, right? That sense of loss and redesigning your life, I think it's a really important reminder, really important point, that it has to be a reconstruction. It has to be a proactive effort, a proactive reconstructive effort. Because if you just sit and wait for something to happen, it probably isn't going to, right? You could have sat for years and never gone and got your degree because it's too hard. You could have not built relationships because you were limited by transportation or limited by technology. You could have not gone and gotten a career because, well, it's just, I just can't do that. You didn't do that, right? You have more friends than I probably ever will, right? You have this great career. You have these enormous opportunities to serve. And while you've lost a great deal, you've also added in a great deal into your life, and you continue to do so. This Miss Wheelchair America opportunity, it landed in your lap. I know you were nominated for it, but I think it's a sum result of how you're living your life. Call it the law of attraction or ripple effects. But isn't that one of the keys in your experience to finding joy, to finding certainty, is to put it out there and let it come back to you? I mean, I'm speaking in my opinion, but any thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. It started with just self-identity for me, going back to just the pure truth that this is who I am, and nothing that I experience can take that from me. And that's a really powerful place to start. And then just trying to move forward. I look back and I am amazed I even went away to college, and my mom moved with me for 3 years to another state so that I could get my college degree. And I didn't realize at the time really the difficulty of what I was doing. And looking back, when I tell people that, they're like, "Are you serious? That's incredible." And I'm like, yeah, it was pretty awesome actually, and also really difficult. They broke my arm while I was there. I broke my leg while I was there. I fell out of my chair on campus. So there were all these hurdles, but I just had to keep moving forward, rolling forward, on a daily basis, rolling forward. And
and shout out to your mom, Chris, right? For being a rock star to go with you and spend 3 days in a college dorm with a bunch of college kids. I mean, your mom is amazing. I know.
And I am extremely blessed. The more I talk to people who have a similar disability to mine, or just any disability at all, I am completely surrounded by so many fortunate things. I have a really amazing family. I am part of a church community, which is a really important piece to mental health for me. I have the opportunity to get education. I have a job. I just, outside of having a disability, I am so incredibly blessed. And those things have really helped me, to be able to keep moving forward. And you talked about taking things for granted. I remember just right after my injury, I was still in the hospital. And at first I couldn't move my arms. I can move them a little bit now. I can't use my hands or my wrists. But when you injure your spinal cord, it swells. And as the swelling started to come down in those first 2 months, I was able to move my arm again. And the first thing I could do was just turn my wrist over. And the nurses and the therapists were just so excited. They were just, "Oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever." And I was thinking, are you serious? I want to walk. I don't want to turn my wrist over. This is, what good is this going to do me? But I didn't know yet. I didn't realize that was actually a huge victory that would allow me to drive my chair in a certain way and eventually scratch my nose, and so that perspective and that first lesson of like every single thing that we have in this life, for me, it's, aspects of my physical health, but we should count them all and be grateful, because, I have to, because I am so fortunate and so blessed.
Oh, and I think it's a really important lesson for anyone who's listening, who's going through their own challenges, to maintain that perspective, that reminder of gratitude, right? It's not enough to go through life and just survive. I think we've got to thrive. We've got to learn and proactively, I say proactively, but actively work at sucking the marrow out of it, right? As Robin Williams said in Dead Poets Society. You know, I remember a story of it's in the book of Nephi, in the Book of Mormon. There's a prophet named Nephi who's on a ship, and they're crossing the ocean, and his brothers tie him to the mast. They're pretty kind of rebellious, right? They're bad dudes, but they tie him to the mast of this ship for 3 days, and there's a storm raging, and the ship is about to capsize, and the brothers are partying and being rude and mocking their parents and all these things, right? And he stays focused, not only to survive, not only to get through it, but to thrive. He praises God. He continues to pray. He continues to maintain the right paradigm, right? The right perspective. I think it's an important reminder, because it's not enough just to survive your challenges, but imagine getting to the point where you're actually grateful for them, not just for the blessings, but for the trials.
Mm-hmm.
When he finally gets released, you know this story. The storm calms. He immediately gets the ship back on track, because he didn't waste time or lose time getting off into misery, depression, discouragement. He just stayed focused. I heard a saying once that when bad things happen to us, we should use that opportunity, and that's what the speaker called it, an opportunity to grow, to remember, to reflect on Christ and what he sacrificed for. It was an opportunity to come unto him. Scripture say, come unto me. How do you do that without experiencing some of what he experienced? He even went so far to say, if you are fortunate enough to deal with chronic pain, use it for what it's worth. And that's so foreign to so many of us, to be grateful for our trials. But I do believe it's a key to strong mental health. We're almost done here. We've only got a couple more minutes. Anything else you'd add, Jill, before we have to sign off?
Yes, I've learned in the past few months, just with Miss Wheelchair Washington, talking to organizations in Washington and national organizations, that for anyone who is dealing with mental health issues or mental illness or a disability, that there are organizations out there who have programs and tools and things to help you. There are really a lot of people doing great work. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, and as I've spoken to these organizations, I'll be working with them to create programs for people with physical disabilities specifically, because there isn't as much support for the mental health struggles of people with disabilities. There's a lot for those two categories separately, but together there needs to be more support. And I don't want to paint a rosy picture that life is easy, you just make up your mind and everything's better. It's really difficult to have a disability. It's really difficult to have mental health issues. And one of the biggest key things that I've discovered is just honesty, telling people, talking to others, finding a community of people who will hear you and listen to you and not judge you, but where you can have the conversation about really letting people know where you're at and what help you need. And maybe you don't even know what you need, but there are people out there who do, and they can help you. And I think that's a really important message, to destigmatize the topic of mental health. We hear it a lot, and if you haven't experienced it yourself, you don't understand, but we can still learn. Awareness is really important. It gives us, help to be able to help others. And so if you don't know much about it, learn about it. It's really easy these days to learn and educate yourselves on topics and issues. And so find out more, find someone, ask someone with a disability or with a mental health struggle what their experience is, and so honesty, vulnerability, and having conversation.
Love that. Jill, thank you for being on Finding Certainty this morning. Hopefully you learned some things as you're listening. Learn to give service. Learn to try to look at things differently. Learn to surround yourselves and build a community. You may not have a tribe. You may not have a supportive family. Go out and build one. Go out and build those connections. Do so, and it will help 100%. We're out of time, but there is certainty out there. You can have it. You can find it. We can help. And we wish you the very best. Have a great weekend, everybody, and thanks for listening. And Jill, thanks for being on the call.
Thank you.
All right. We're off the audio part. We can still keep recording for a couple minutes on YouTube. Anything else you'd want to add? I know we ran out of time there at the end, but we touched on a lot. We talk about recognizing that you can find joy. It's going to be different, but it doesn't have to be bad, right? It's tomato in a very real sense. It's a different experience. It's a different perspective, but that doesn't mean it has to be less or worse. It's just different. It does take that paradigm shift, right? It doesn't take a mindset shift, but it is very doable. I've had to learn that in my life from my losses, death, divorce, bankruptcy. I've been through a lot, and a lot of it was not of my doing. It wasn't my choice, just like your accident wasn't your choice.
I think that's an important point. The not living in a victim mindset. that we always have our agency. We always have the ability to choose. That limitations that are placed on us out of our control, no matter what it is, that we don't have to be a victim to those things, and that we can choose to see ourselves as capable and powerful and just an agent. That we this is different from a victim of domestic violence, but just not limiting ourselves through that victim mindset, and always believing that there could be better and trying to hold on to that hope.
Right, you have to, right? I think one of the most important characteristics of anyone who wants to be successful in life is water off a duck's back. You have to let your challenges and the hurdles that come flow right off your back. You can't let them throw you off. You may have to adjust. We talked about recalculating, right? Like a GPS. I get lost a lot. My GPS says recalculating a lot, right? But we have to do the same thing in our lives. And if we can remember that we're not alone, we're not the only one going through this. If we can forgive ourselves when we need to, we can forgive others if we have to. I think one of the most important things we've done just in our company, for example, is constantly asking, what else can we do? How can we get better? How can we fix what's not working and improve what is working? You have to keep asking yourself those questions. And then in the process, you surround yourself by others who feel the same way and are doing the same thing. That's building your tribe, your family. That's why church is so important, and other things like that. But it's this ongoing adventure, right? If we just sit and wait for things to happen, they never will. If we sit in our house and never leave the house, we're going to be lonely. We're going to be isolated. If we allow the limitations that are already there, that have been imposed to control us, we're adding more limitations to our lives and our experience that didn't have to be there. And I think that's an important point to remember is life is hard enough without adding to it, right? If you can have an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset, if you can recalculate and get back on the path rather than staying off the path for too long, you're not making it harder than it has to be. It is hard enough all by itself. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Yes. And um, I think it's difficult. Some people are just suffering so much that it's hard to even make that conscious choice, because mental health just limits your ability to have hope or feel spiritual connection, or just believe that even the next moment can be better. And so finding people who know how to help in those situations and get you to a place where you can choose, not to be a victim, is because you have to be at a certain level of health to even have that mental capacity to make that choice. And there's a lot of people out there who aren't even at that place. And so the right organizations and doctors and whatever treatment looks like for them, we have to help people get there as well.
Yeah. It makes me think of the monologue I did a couple months back where I talked about faith. And faith doesn't happen overnight, right? It's like I talked about how it's like planting a seed that has to grow, and you have to till it and you have to water it, and I said the very first thing is you have to desire to believe. You desire to have faith. Just like as you're going through mental health issues or a physical disability, you have to desire to overcome it, to get through it, to find a better way or find joy. That's first step, right? But then and it doesn't happen overnight. It's difficult. It's hard. But if you keep going, that seed can take root and it can start to grow. And it gives these three evidences. You know what these are, Jill. It starts to enlarge your soul. You start to feel maybe a little inkling of hope, or a little more optimism, a little bit of a little bit of faith, right? Starting to grow. And then it says you enlightens your understanding. You start to understand the opportunities before you and what you can be giving, and maybe ways that you can contribute or can find joy in. And then it says it becomes delicious to you, which means you want it more. You catch that glimpse and you're like, maybe it's not the end of the world. Maybe there is something that I can give, or something I can become. It doesn't mean it's easy, and it does take time. I don't think you're ever done, right? It's an ongoing process of trying to grow that seed into a tree. But I love that analogy because it reminds us that it's a process. It's not a destination, right? It takes work, but all you have to do to start is to have hope and have desire for it to get better. Which, if you don't have desire, I don't know what to tell you. That's I think it's an uphill battle if you can't start with at least that much. So anyway, we could talk all morning about this stuff, but any last thoughts before we cut off?
Well, I'll be leaving in a little over a week to go to Michigan, like you mentioned at the beginning, to the Miss Wheelchair America competition, where I'll spend a week with the other about 22 other wheelchair queens who'll be there from other states. And we'll have classes and different activities, and then 3 different panel interviews by the judges who'll be there. And we'll have a night where we have to give a speech, and then another night where we'll have the final night where they'll pick the top 5 and then the winner. And then whoever becomes Miss Wheelchair America 2025 will spend the year traveling around the country talking about her platform, whatever it is. We all have different areas that we focused on. And so it will be very exciting. I'm really looking forward to meeting these other women who are doing good in their area that they've focused on, and creating some really good friendships.
Yeah, we're very excited for you, Jill. That's we're cheering you on. You say it's not for a beauty pageant, but if it was, you'd probably win that too, because not only are you talented, but you're beautiful, and
Thank you.
We're excited for you. So anyway, keep trucking. Frank told me to remind you he's ready to get you that wheelchair with the flames on the side and the big exhaust in the back. You let us know when you want to do that.
All right. Yeah, I'll start drawing it out.
Yeah, start your design.
Yeah.
That goes more with your personality and your attitude. Flames. We got to get a leather jacket, with big,
Yes. I don't know if you can.
Micro gang symbol on the back or something, right?
Right. I don't know if Canva has that option to design fancy wheelchairs, but maybe someday.
I don't know. Canva is pretty robust.
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it. No. Well, have a good week. I'm heading back on Monday or Sunday to Henderson and tell you more about this week. We had I started to tell you before. Let me finish this. We talked about the Certainty Fellowship, where we're helping kids, have a brighter future. Right? It's so much fun to be able to give back and help inspire the next generation, and that's why I talk about service as it being so important in mental health. But at this expo, we met this group called Entrepreneur High School, and it's a school where the kids learn how to be entrepreneurs, and they have hands-on things, like they have their own print shop where they print T-shirts and mugs and business cards and stuff, and they have a little catering business and so forth. So it was so much fun, Jill, talking to these kids. We interviewed several of them on the radio show. And we talked to the CEO and the principal and about partnering with them to help. I mean, they have about 2,600 students, but to help these students to go to college debt-free, to be able to inspire the next generations. I mean, they were very excited about what we could do to help them. We were excited about working with them because these kids, a lot of them from lower income communities, and they're just trying to make something of their lives. And I think whether you're a person with a disability or a young kid trying to make your future, or you're a family trying to figure out marriage and parenthood and everything, you need help, right? You got to work together and band together, and 1 + 1 = 11 rather than just 2, right? And so anyway, it was really cool. That's what I was going to tell you about earlier, but it was fun.
Very good. That sounds like a great organization.
Yeah, we're excited. They could be a good feeder for us to help a lot of kids and a lot of cities in the process. So anyway, always a pleasure. I get to talk to you a lot more than most of my guests, so I'll see you on Monday. But have a good weekend, and congratulations again on Miss Wheelchair Washington.
Thank you.
Personally, I think you're a shoe-in for Miss Wheelchair America, but
some of these ladies they're getting after it. They're really accomplished. I'm on a text chat chain with all of them. It's going off all day long, and like, I was interviewed on this television show, and yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Well, you're in good company, but you're going to give them a run for their money. And either way, whatever the result, we know it's well-deserved, and what an experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm sure you're having a good time. So, all right. Well, have a great weekend. Thanks for being on the show as always.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Finding Certainty. We hope you've gained some more insight into how to create more certainty in your own business or nonprofit. Join us next week for another taste of the Certainty Experience. Until then, we wish you greater certainty in all that you do.